The first time my daughter said someone was knocking under the floor, I told her it was the generator settling. That was the lie I chose. Not because I believed it, but because I needed her to believe it. And at 6 years old, Mira still believed almost anything I said with the steady patience of a child who hadn't yet learned her father could be wrong. We had been underground for 9 days. The bunker wasn't ours, not really. It belonged to a man named Halden, who used to run a hardware store in the next town over, and who had built this place during the years when people laughed at men like him. He stopped laughing first. He'd let us in on the third night of the outbreak because my wife, Iris, had once fixed his daughter's broken wrist in the ER, and he remembered her name. That's the only reason we were alive. A wrist set clean 8 years ago. There were 6 of us down there. Halden, who barely spoke and chewed sunflower seeds like he was rationing every shell. His son Cal, 19, a tall kid with a fresh scar above his eyebrow he wouldn't explain. A woman named Brenna, who'd come in with us from the parking lot of the gas station, carrying a backpack full of insulin she said was for her mother, though her mother was nowhere. And then the 3 of us. Iris, Mira, me. My name is Adam Sorrell. I taught high school chemistry for 11 years, which qualifies me for almost nothing useful now, except an unwanted ability to think about exactly which gases were probably building up in the corners of the bunker and what concentration would kill us before the dead did. The knocking started just after the lantern dimmed for the night. 3 soft taps, then nothing, then 3 more. Almost polite, like a neighbor at a door. Mira sat straight up on the cot. She had Iris's dark hair and my insomnia, and she'd been pretending to sleep for an hour. Her eyes went to the floor first, then to me, and she whispered, "Daddy, somebody's knocking." I told her about the generator. I told her the pipes contracted in the cold. I told her old places make sounds the way old people make sounds, which got a small breath out of her that was almost a laugh. Iris, beside me, didn't move, but I felt her hand find my wrist under the blanket and grip hard enough to leave 4 pale crescents I'd find in the morning. The knocking didn't come again that night, but Mira didn't sleep. She lay with her cheek to the steel and listened to the floor the way other children listen to seashells. And I lay beside her, listening to her listening, and neither of us said another word until the lantern brightened again with the morning timer. By breakfast, which was warm powdered milk and a quarter of a protein bar each, I had convinced myself I'd imagined it. People imagine things in bunkers. That's documented. Sensory deprivation, low oxygen, fear. I told myself the word for it was hypnagogic, and I felt better for knowing the word. Then Cal came in from the back corridor with a face the color of old paper and said, "Dad, something's wrong with the lower hatch." Halden put down his cup very slowly. "What kind of wrong?" "It's warm," Cal said. "The handle, it's warm to the touch." I watched Halden's jaw work around nothing for a long second. He looked at Mira before he looked at me, and that was the moment I understood that whatever I had heard the night before, he had heard too, and had also chosen not to say. "Adam," he said, "come with me." I followed him down the corridor, and behind me, Mira's small voice said very clearly, "Tell the knocking man I said hi." The lower hatch was at the end of a hallway no one used, behind a curtain of canvas Halden had hung the day we arrived. He said it was for insulation. I had assumed it was for forgetting. The hatch itself was a circle of riveted steel about the size of a manhole cover, set into the floor, with a wheel handle in the center. A chain ran through the wheel and was padlocked to an eye bolt sunk into the concrete. The padlock was the kind you'd see on a shipping container, heavy and serious and meant to make a statement. Halden crouched and put his palm flat against the steel. Then he took it away and looked at his hand like he didn't recognize it. "Touch it." I touched it. It wasn't hot. It wasn't even warm the way Cal had said. It was the temperature of a living thing. The temperature of a forehead. That kind of warmth doesn't belong to metal, and once you feel it on metal, you don't forget it. "What's down there?" I said. Halden didn't answer for a while. He was looking at the chain. "Service tunnel," he said finally, "runs east about 200 meters and comes up in the old pumping station. I sealed it after I built the place." belt and suspenders. You don't dig a hole in the ground without a second way out. Is the pumping station still standing? It was a week ago. Could someone be down there? A person? He looked up at me and I saw for the first time that Halden was afraid, not the controlled, jaw-set fear he'd been carrying since we arrived, but the older, deeper kind, the kind that lives in a man's chest the way a stone lives in a riverbed. A person could be down there, he said. Yes. But you don't think so? I think, he said standing up, that the chain is on the inside. I looked at the chain again. He was right. The padlock and chain held the wheel from this side. From below, anyone with enough strength and enough time could turn that wheel. The chain only meant we'd hear them first. We went back up the corridor without speaking. Iris met my eyes when I came through the curtain and read everything she needed to read in 3 seconds. She drew Mira closer against her hip without seeming to. Brenna was at the table, peeling the foil off a stim pack with her teeth. She didn't look up. So, she said, are we going to talk about the noise, or are we going to pretend like decent people? Cal made a sound in his throat. Halden ignored both of them. There's an acoustic explanation, I said because someone had to say something, and because I was still trying to be the kind of man my daughter could believe. Pipes, settling, air pockets in the soil. Acoustic, Brenna said. Sure, my grandmother used to say the same thing about the woman in her attic. Acoustic, Brenna. I'm just saying, Adam. I'm just observing. She held up the stim pack, examined it, tucked it into her sleeve. I've heard a lot of houses. None of them ever knocked 3 times in a row and then waited. Mira tilted her head up. It knocked again? No, honey, Iris said. It did, though, Mira said calmly. The way she used to correct me about which dinosaur was which. It knocked when you were in the hallway with Mr. Halden. 4 times. And then it stopped. I felt the bunker grow very still around us. Even the air handler seemed to hesitate. Halden walked to the supply locker, opened it, and took out a pry bar. He weighed it in his hand for a moment and then leaned it against the wall by the canvas curtain. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. That night, I moved Mira's cot to the far side of the main chamber, against the wall furthest from the lower hatch, and I sat up with my back to the steel door and a flashlight in my lap that I did not turn on. I listened to my daughter's breathing slow and even, and to my wife's breathing not slow at all, and I waited. At 2:47 a.m. by my watch, the knocking came again. This time it had a rhythm. It was the rhythm that broke me. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, pause, 3 taps. Then silence for the length of a held breath. Then again, 3, 2, 3, patient, even, almost shy. You know, random sounds don't have rhythm. Pipes don't count. I was on my feet before I had decided to stand. The flashlight came on in my hand without my permission and threw a cone across the bunker, catching Iris already sitting up, already reaching for Mira, already too late because Mira was not in her cot. For a second, the whole world reduced to that empty blanket. Mira. Daddy, I'm here. She was at the canvas curtain. She had pulled it aside with one small fist and she was standing very still, looking down the hallway toward the lower hatch, and she was smiling the careful, uncertain smile of a child being polite to a stranger. I crossed the room in 4 strides and pulled her back. She didn't resist. She let me pick her up the way she'd let me pick her up when she was 3, with her arms around my neck and her cheek against my collarbone, and she said into my ear, in the smallest voice she had ever used with me, "He knows my name, Daddy." Behind me, Halden was already up, pry bar in his hand. Cal was a step behind him, eyes wide and the scar above his eyebrows standing out white. Brenna was sitting cross-legged on her cot, watching all of us with an expression I couldn't read. "What do you mean he knows your name?" I said. Mira pressed her face harder into my neck. "He said it through the floor. He said, 'Mira, can you hear me, Mira?' He said it like Grandpa used to say it." Iris made a sound, a small one, the kind of sound a person makes when they have just realized something they would have given anything not to realize. Her father had died 18 months ago. He was the only person who had ever called Mira by her name in that particular way, with the slight stretch on the first syllable, the music of it. That's not possible, I said. And even as I said it, I understood that possibility had stopped being the relevant word about 10 days ago. Halden walked past me toward the curtain. He pulled it open and stood at the mouth of the hallway with the pry bar held low against his thigh. The knocking had stopped. He stood there for a full minute, maybe longer. Then he came back and let the curtain fall and looked at all of us in turn, ending with me. They mimic, he said. What? I don't know what to call them, the ones I saw in town before I came down. They get sounds in their throats, babies crying, dogs. I saw one outside the pharmacy doing a car alarm, just standing there in the middle of the lot doing a car alarm over and over until somebody came out to check. Then it stopped doing the alarm. You never told us this, Iris said. I didn't want to scare anyone. Halden. I didn't want to scare her, he said, looking at Mira. I sat down on the edge of the cot with my daughter still in my lap, and I tried to make my hands steady against her back. Iris sat down next to me and put her arm around both of us. How would it know her name, she said. Halden didn't answer, but Cal, after a long second, said, Brenna's been talking on the radio. Everyone turned. Brenna's face didn't change. I've been listening to the radio. There's a difference. You've been talking. Once, I called out once. 2 nights ago. No one answered. You called out our names? I called out my own name, Cal. Jesus. Did you say where you were? No, I'm not stupid. Did you say who you were with? Brenna's mouth opened, closed. Her eyes flicked just once to Mira. I might have said there was a little girl. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, Halden was already walking toward the radio, and Mira was looking up at me with the calm, terrible attention of a child who has understood, before any of the adults, exactly what kind of story she is in. The radio was the first thing we broke that morning. Halden didn't smash it. He was too careful a man for that. He unscrewed the back, removed the transmitter board, and set it down on the table in front of Brenna like a body at a wake. Then he closed the case again and put the receiver back on its shelf. We could still listen. We could no longer answer. You should have asked, Brenna said. I shouldn't have had to. My mother might be out there. My sister. Any one of 100 people I know might be out there trying to find me. And you just took Your mother isn't out there. It came out of him, flat and final, and Brenna stopped talking. I think she had been waiting for someone to say it for 2 weeks. Sometimes the thing you most want is for another person to take the lie out of your hands. She sat for a long time after that, her fingers on the edge of the dead transmitter board, her face turned away from the rest of us. Cal made coffee from the last of the instant grounds and put a cup near her elbow without saying anything. He had his father's instinct for the kindness that didn't require words. I took Mira aside. We sat together in the narrow bunk corner that had become hers, with her blanket over both our laps. I asked her, gently, to tell me everything she had heard. She thought about it the way she thought about hard math problems, with her tongue against the inside of her cheek. It said my name first, she said, like Grandpa. Then it said, can you hear me, Mira? Then it said, it's cold down here. Then it said, please. Please what? Just please. Did it say anything else? She nodded. It said, don't tell the tall man. Halden was the tall man. He was the tallest person in the bunker by half a head. Mira, I said, sweetheart, listen to me. Whatever is down there, it isn't Grandpa. It isn't a person. It's something that learned how to sound like a person, the way a parrot learns to sound like a person. Do you understand? Like a parrot. Like a parrot. She thought about this for a while, then she said, parrots don't know what the words mean, right? Right. So why did it know to say, don't tell the tall man? I had no answer. I held her tighter and kissed the top of her head and told her she was the bravest person I had ever met. And she let me say it because she could tell I needed to say it more than she needed to hear it. That afternoon, Halden took inventory. He did it out loud, walking the perimeter of the bunker with a clipboard, calling numbers to Cal, who wrote them down. 14 gallons of water, 31 cans of food, 6 packs of batteries, 2 propane tanks, one of them almost empty, a first aid kit that had already been raided for Iris's anxiety medication, of which there were 9 pills left, a shotgun with 12 shells, a hunting rifle with 8, a handgun with a full magazine and 1 spare, 2 flashlights, 3 lanterns, a hand crank radio we no longer needed. He didn't say how long it would last. He didn't need to. We all did the math in our heads at different speeds. Iris, who had run trauma supply rotations in a hospital, was probably done first. Brenna, who had run a restaurant, was probably done second. Cal kept writing. He hadn't yet learned how to estimate a life in cans. I watched my wife while she did her own math, and I watched her decide not to share the answer. That night, Iris and I lay in our cot with our backs to each other for the first time since we'd been down there. Not from anger, from exhaustion of a kind that didn't want to be witnessed. Adam, yeah, if it gets through, it's not getting through. If it does. Iris, I want you to take her up and out through the top hatch. Don't wait for me. Don't argue with me. Don't think about it. Iris, stop. Promise me. I didn't promise her. I couldn't make my mouth form the words. She didn't push. She just turned and put her hand flat between my shoulder blades and left it there until I fell asleep. And when I woke up 4 hours later, her hand was still there. And I understood that she had not slept at all. On the 11th day, the lower hatch began to breathe. That's the only word for it. The steel circle, when you put your palm against it, rose and fell very slightly on a slow rhythm that was almost but not quite the rhythm of a sleeping person. The chain creaked at the same interval. Halden watched it for a long time without touching it and then said quietly, "Pressure differential," which was the kind of thing a man says when he wants a phenomenon to behave. Cal said, "Or there's something leaning on it." Halden didn't answer. We doubled the chain. That is, Halden ran a second length through the wheel and bolted it to a different eye bolt, and then he ran a third strap across the hatch itself, ratcheted tight to anchors he'd set into the concrete. By the end, he was sweating through his shirt and his hands were shaking, and he sat on the floor next to the hatch for a while with his head against the wall. I sat down next to him. "You built this place to keep something in," I said, "not just to keep something out." He looked at me sideways. "Why would you say that?" "The chain, the locks, the way you've been looking at the hatch since the first night. You knew something was down there before we did." He was quiet for a long time. The hatch under our feet rose, paused, fell. Rose, paused, fell. "There was an outbreak before this one," he said. "Small one. Local. They called it a contamination event 12 years ago. You wouldn't have heard about it. I was working at the plant up the river, the one they shut down. 3 men went into a tank to clean it, and 2 came out. And the one who didn't come out wasn't dead exactly. He was something else. They sealed the tank with him in it, and they paid us all to forget." Halden. "They paid us a lot." Halden. "When the news started 6 months ago, I knew. I knew what we were looking at. I built this place because I thought, if it ever comes around again, I'm going under, and I'm taking my boy with me. I dug the service tunnel because every man who's ever built a hole in the ground has wished he'd built a second way out. I sealed it because I knew what could come through a second way out." "Is the thing in the tunnel the man from the tank?" "No, the man from the tank is in the tank. They never opened it." "Then what's down there?" He shook his head. "Nothing I want to put a name to. But I'll tell you what I think, Adam. I think these things, the new ones, the ones in town, I think they go to ground when they can. I think they like the dark. I think one of them found the pumping station and came down the tunnel because the tunnel was warm. And I think it's been at the hatch for 2 days because it can hear us. And I think the reason it knows your daughter's name is that your daughter has been talking to it." I stood up so fast my vision went black at the edges. "She hasn't. Adam, she hasn't been talking to it. Ask her." I didn't ask her. I went and watched her instead. She was sitting on her cot drawing in the margins of a paperback Iris had given her, a thick orange one about a girl and a horse. She was drawing small, careful circles in pencil, the way she always did when she was thinking. I sat down across from her. "Mira." "Hi, Daddy." Honey, have you been talking to the thing under the floor? She didn't look up from her circles. She drew one more, very slowly, and then she set the pencil down and folded her hands in her lap the way she used to do at the dinner table when she had broken something. He sounded sad, she said. Oh, baby. I only said hi. What else did you say? I said I was sorry he was cold, and I told him my name because he asked. And I told him your name because he asked. And Mommy's, and Mr. Halden's, and the tall boy and the lady with the bag. I closed my eyes. That's all I told him, she said. I promise. I didn't tell him about the food or the door at the top or anything Mr. Halden said about the chain. That's good. That's good, sweetheart. Daddy. Yeah. He told me his name too. I opened my eyes. He said his name is Ellis, she said. He said he used to have a little girl too. He said her name was Mira, just like me. He said that's why he came to find me. We held a council that night. That's what Halden called it, with a small, dry smile, like he was embarrassed by the word but couldn't think of a better one. The 5 adults sat around the table. Mira was on the cot with her headphones on, listening to an audiobook on Iris's old phone with the screen dimmed so low it was almost off. We had agreed she shouldn't hear what was coming. We can't stay, Iris said first. We can't leave, Halden said. We can't stay, Halden. Whatever that thing is, it knows she's here. It's working on her. It's been working on her since the first night. You said it yourself, they mimic. They learn. It has a name now. It has a story. In another week, it'll have her opening the hatch from the inside. Iris. Don't Iris me. You have a daughter. Imagine. Halden looked at his hands. Cal looked at his father. Brenna looked at the dead transmitter board, which she had not moved from the table since Halden put it there. If we go up, Halden said, we go up into the town. The town was already overrun when you came in. It will be worse now. I have one vehicle, the truck. It's a quarter tank. It's behind a building that may or may not still be standing. We will have to walk to it. We will have to walk past whatever is on the streets to get to it. We have a 6-year-old. I know we have a 6-year-old, Halden. She's my 6-year-old. Then you know what I'm saying. I know what you're saying. I'm saying staying is worse. You don't know that. I know that thing knows her name. Brenna spoke for the first time. I have an idea. Everyone turned. She didn't enjoy the attention. She kept her eyes on the table. The tunnel comes up at the pumping station, right? 200 meters east. If we could get something into the tunnel between the hatch and the pumping station, something to collapse it, then whatever is at the hatch can't get to us, and if anything else comes down the tunnel from outside, it can't get to us either. We seal the tunnel from above. From above, Halden said. Meaning someone goes outside, to the pumping station, drops something down the tunnel, comes back. That's not an idea. That's a death. It's a chance. It's a death. You said the truck is a death too. You said going up is a death. Everything in this room is a death, Halden. I'm just trying to pick one that gives the rest of us a few more days. Cal said, I'll go. His father went very still. You will not, Dad. You will not. I'm the fastest. I know the layout. You walked me through it twice. I can carry a propane tank. We light it, drop it. It caves the tunnel for 10 meters easy. I'm back inside in under 20 minutes. Cal. Dad, who else? Adam has a kid. Brenna has the insulin route memorized for her mom we both know isn't there. Iris is a doctor. We can't lose her. You're 61 years old. Who else? There it was. The math of us said out loud, in a son's voice to a father. Halden put his face in his hands for a moment. When he took them away, his eyes were red, but his voice was steady. Not alone. I'll go with him, I said. Iris's head snapped toward me. Adam. Cal's right. He needs someone with him. 2 people is twice as fast and 4 times as safe. I'll go. Adam. Iris. If Mira opens that hatch one night because Ellis tells her to, none of this matters. We have to close that tunnel. She didn't answer me. She got up and walked over to Mira's cot and sat down on the edge of it, and put one hand on our daughter's small back, and she stayed there with her face turned away from all of us for a long time. When she came back to the table, her eyes were dry and her mouth was a thin line. "You come back," she said. "I come back. Both of you. Both of you come back." Cal nodded. I nodded. Behind us, under the floor, 3 soft taps. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. Patient. Even. Almost shy. The top hatch had not been opened in 11 days. Halden cranked the wheel slowly, listening between turns. When the seal broke, it sighed cold air down on us, and with the air came the smell I had been afraid of for almost 2 weeks. It wasn't rot exactly. It was the smell of a freezer that had lost power, of meat and metal and something sweeter than either. And underneath all of that, the faintest trace of wood smoke from a fire still burning somewhere we couldn't see. Cal climbed up first. I went second. Halden stayed on the ladder behind me with the shotgun braced against his hip, watching the rim of the hatch the way a man watches the surface of dark water. The bunker came up inside a tool shed at the back of Halden's property. The shed had been built around the hatch, which was how he had kept it hidden from neighbors for a decade. The shed walls were intact. The door was still latched from the inside. That was the first piece of good news we'd had all day. Cal listened at the door for a full minute. Then he eased the latch up and opened it half an inch. He stayed there for a long time. When he stepped back, his face was the same color it had been when he'd come in from the lower hatch, the color of old paper. "Yard's clear," he whispered, "but the house is gone. Gone. Burned, the back half. You can see straight through." I looked past his shoulder. He was right. The house Halden had lived in for 31 years was a black hollow. The kitchen window was just a square of sky. There was no smoke. Whatever had burned days ago. The wind moved through the ribs of it like air through a chest. Halden, behind me on the ladder, made a small sound. Just one. Then he said evenly, "We go around the south side. The pumping station is across the creek. Don't run. Running makes noise." We went. The yard was overgrown and silent. The grass in November shouldn't have been this tall, but there was no one left to cut it. Cal moved first in a low crouch, the propane tank strapped to his back with the same nylon webbing Halden had used on the lower hatch. I followed with the bolt cutters and a half roll of detonation cord I hadn't known Halden owned, and I hadn't asked about. There were limits to what you wanted to know about the man who'd let you live. We crossed the yard in pieces, from the shed to the woodpile. From the woodpile to the rusted swing set Cal had probably been too tall for since middle school. From the swing set to the fence line. It was at the fence line that I saw the first one. It was standing in the neighbor's driveway, perfectly still, facing away from us. It had been a man, tall in a green jacket, with dark hair gone matted at the back of the head where something had gotten to it. It wasn't moving. It wasn't breathing in any way I could see. It was just standing there the way Halden had said they stood, the way the one outside the pharmacy had stood doing a car alarm. Cal held up a fist. We stopped. We watched it for what felt like a year. It didn't turn. After a long time, Cal lowered his hand very slowly and pointed left. We moved left. We made it to the creek. The creek was low and slow and the color of weak tea. We waded across in water that came up to our knees and was so cold I could feel my pulse in my teeth. Cal slipped once and I caught him by the strap of the propane tank, and we both went still, waiting to hear if the splash had carried. Nothing came. We made it to the pumping station. It was a squat concrete building the size of a single-car garage, with one steel door, no windows, and a smell coming out of it that was worse than the smell at the hatch had been. Cal looked at the door for a long time before he touched it. "Dad said it'd be unlocked," he whispered. "Is it?" He tried the handle. It was. The door swung inward into a darkness that felt much larger than the building. Cal looked at me. He was 19 years old and he had a fresh scar over his eyebrow he had never explained, and a propane tank on his back and his father's shotgun on a sling of his hip. And he looked at me with the absolute terrible trust of a kid who was about to follow a stranger into a hole because the stranger was older, and that was supposed to mean something. I clicked on my flashlight. "I go first," I said. Inside the pumping station, the air was warmer than it had any right to be. That was the thing I noticed first. The outside air had been close to freezing. The inside air was the temperature of a closed bedroom in summer, and it was moving very gently, the way air moves in a place where something is breathing. The flashlight beam crawled across the walls. Old pipes, some of them sweating, some of them red with rust. A control panel that hadn't worked in years. A floor drain in the middle of the room. And in the corner, set into the concrete floor, a square hatch with the cover already half off. Cal saw it the same moment I did. His hand closed on my elbow hard enough to leave marks. Dad said it was sealed, he whispered. It was. Adam, I see it. The cover was a plate of steel, maybe 4 feet square, set flush into the floor with a recessed handle. Something had pushed it up from below. Not lifted exactly, levered. The bolts that had held it down were sheared. 2 of them lay on the concrete a few feet away, bright at the broken ends. I knelt and put my hand near the opening. Warm air came up out of it in a slow, steady column, and with the air came a sound. Not knocking this time. Breathing. The deep, slow breathing of something asleep. Or pretending to be. Cal was already shrugging out of the propane tank. Set it here, I whispered. We don't have to go down. We drop it down, we light it, we close the cover, we run. The blast caves the tunnel between here and the bunker. We don't have to see anything. We don't have to go anywhere near it. What if it doesn't cave? Then we run anyway. He nodded. His hands were shaking. I noticed that mine were not, which surprised me. There is a kind of fear so large it goes past trembling and becomes its own stillness. We set the tank at the edge of the hatch. I unspooled a length of detonation cord, the way Halden had shown me at the kitchen table that morning, with my hands on top of his hands so I would remember the motions. I taped the cord to the valve. I uncoiled the rest of it across the floor toward the door, paying it out behind me. Cal stayed at the hatch. Cal, come on! Adam! Cal? Adam, there's something. I looked back. He was on his knees at the edge of the hatch. His flashlight pointed down into it, and his face had gone past pale to something gray. What? There's a kid down there. What? There's a kid, a little kid. She's looking up at me. I moved before I thought. I crossed the room in 3 steps and dropped beside him and looked down into the hatch. The flashlight beam fell on a face about 6 feet below us, a small face. A girl maybe 7 years old, with dark hair plastered to her forehead and her hands lifted up toward the light. And she was crying soundlessly, the kind of crying a child does when they have learned that making noise brings worse things. Please, she whispered. Please, mister. Please, I can't get out. Cal made a sound in his throat. Cal? Adam, she's a kid. Cal, listen to me. She's a kid, Adam. She's just a kid. Cal, listen. He looked at me. It knows my daughter's name, I said. It knows my dead father-in-law's voice. It has been at the hatch for 3 days learning how to sound like a person who needs help. Look at her hands. He looked. The little girl's hands were perfect. They were the hands of a child who had never been outside in 11 days of an outbreak. They were clean. The nails were trimmed. The skin on the knuckles was unbroken. Below the wrists where the sleeves of her thin sweater ended, you could see 2 inches of forearm, and the forearms were the wrong color, and they did not match the hands, and at the elbow they disappeared into the dark. And you understood. You understood without needing to see that the hands had not always been on those arms. Oh God, Cal said. Back away. Oh God, Cal, back away. Now. The little girl's mouth opened. What came out of it was not a child's voice. It was Iris. It was my wife's voice. Exactly my wife's voice. And it said, Adam, please, she's our daughter. Please, you have to help her, Adam, please. I have heard my wife say my name maybe 10,000 times. I knew the voice the way I knew my own pulse. It was perfect. It was so perfect that for half a second my body started to move, my knees started to bend, my hands started to reach down into the hatch, and the only reason I didn't was that Cal beside me made a small broken sound, And that small broken sound was the wrong sound. It was a sound from this world and not the other one. And it pulled me back. I grabbed Cal by the collar and dragged him backward across the concrete floor. "Light it," I said. "Adam, light it, Cal! Light it now!" He fumbled the lighter out of his pocket. The voice in the hatch changed. It was Halden's now. It was Halden saying, "Son, son, it's me. It's Dad. Don't. Cal's hands shook so badly he dropped the lighter. The voice changed again. It was my own voice now. It was me saying, "Mira, Mira, honey, it's Daddy. Can you hear me, Mira?" I picked up the lighter. I lit the cord. We ran. We made it out of the pumping station as the cord caught. We made it across the creek as the first crack of pressure shook the ground under our feet. We made it to the fence line as the pumping station roof lifted, just slightly, and then settled, and a long, low sound came up out of the ground that was not an explosion and not a scream, but something between them. The thing in the green jacket was no longer in the neighbor's driveway. It was in Halden's yard. It was between us and the shed. It had turned to face us, and its face was wrong in a way I will not describe, and it was tilting its head from side to side, very slowly the way a bird does when it is deciding which eye to use. Cal stopped beside me. "Adam." "I see it." "Adam, the shotgun." "Cal, the noise." "Adam, we don't have a choice." We didn't. He raised the shotgun. He was breathing the way a person breathes when they are trying not to cry, in small, short pulls, and his hands were not steady, but he was 19 years old and his father had taught him how to shoot when he was 8, and the body remembers what the mind forgets. He fired once. The thing in the green jacket dropped. The sound was enormous. It rolled across the yard and bounced off the burned ribs of the house and came back to us doubled, and somewhere down the street in a direction I could not place. Another sound answered it. Not a voice, a kind of long, dry whistle, like wind through a broken bottle. Then another, from a different direction. Then another. "Run," I said. We ran. We crossed the yard in a straight line because there was no time for anything else. We hit the shed door at full speed. Halden was already at the top of the ladder with his hands out for us. He pulled Cal down first, then me, and even as I was still on the rungs, he was cranking the hatch shut above my head. And the last thing I saw before the seal closed was a shape coming around the corner of the burned house, low to the ground, moving on too many limbs. The hatch sealed, the wheel spun, the locks went home. We stood at the bottom of the ladder, the three of us, breathing. Halden looked at his son. He looked at the propane residue on Cal's jacket, at the sweat on his face, at the way Cal couldn't quite meet his eyes. "Did it work?" he said. Cal nodded. "You sure?" "It worked." "What did you see?" Cal opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Nothing," he said. "We didn't see anything. We dropped it. We lit it. We left." Halden looked at me. I held his eyes. "Nothing," I said. He looked at us both for a long time. Then he nodded once and turned and walked back toward the main chamber, and I understood that he had known we were lying and had chosen to let us. In the main chamber, Iris was standing in the middle of the floor with her arms wrapped around herself. Mira was on the cot behind her, half hidden by Iris's body. When Iris saw me, she didn't move. She just looked at me. In her face did a thing I had never seen it do before, a kind of slow collapse that started at her mouth and worked outward, and then she crossed the room in 3 steps and put her forehead against my chest and stood there. "You came back," she said. "I came back. Both of you. Both of us." Behind her, Mira was watching me over the top of the cot. She had taken off her headphones. She was holding them in her lap. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby." He stopped. Who stopped? Ellis. He was talking and then he just stopped. In the middle of a word, he stopped and he didn't come back. I sat down on the floor with my wife still leaning into me, and I looked at my daughter across the room. "He's not coming back, sweetheart." "Did you make him stop?" "Yes." She thought about this. Then she nodded, the small, grave nod of a child, accepting a thing she does not fully understand, because the person telling her is the person she trusts most. Okay, she said. She put the headphones back on. The next 2 days were the quietest we had since we came underground. That was the worst part. I had expected relief. I had expected the bunker to feel different, the way a house feels different after a bad guest leaves. The air lighter, the corners softer. It didn't. The hatch was sealed and the tunnel below it was, we believed, collapsed. And yet the bunker felt smaller than it had before, not larger. We had cut off the thing under the floor, and in doing so, we had cut off the part of ourselves that had been organized around the thing under the floor, and what was left was just us looking at each other. Iris stopped sleeping. She sat up on the cot at night with her back against the wall and her hands flat on her thighs and her eyes open. I would wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and find her watching the curtain that hid the lower hallway, and I would say her name, and she would say, "I'm fine," in a voice that meant she was not fine and did not want to be asked about it. Cal stopped eating. He sat at the table at mealtimes and he moved his food around the plate, and after a while Halden stopped trying to make him eat and just sat across from him in silence. On the second night, Cal pushed his plate away and said, very quietly, "It used your voice, Dad." And Halden didn't say anything for a long time, and then he said, "I know, son." And the two of them sat there until the lantern dimmed for the night. Brenna stopped pretending. That was the most surprising of all. The morning of the third day, she sat down across from me at the table with a cup of the ration coffee in her hands, and she said without preamble, "My mother died in March." Brenna, in March, before any of this started. She had a stroke at the breakfast table in her apartment in Tulsa, and I didn't get there in time, and they cremated her on a Tuesday. The insulin in my bag is mine. I'm type 1. I've been type 1 since I was 14 years old. I told you all the insulin was for her because I was afraid that if I told you it was for me, that I needed it, that I couldn't go more than a few days without it, you'd weigh me on a different scale. I didn't answer for a while. "How much do you have left?" I said finally. 3 weeks, maybe 4 if I'm careful. I've been careful. Brenna, I'm not telling you because I want anything. I'm telling you because I'm tired of being the person at the table who lied about who they were. I watched you and Cal go up there for us. For my insulin too, even though you didn't know it. And I sat down here and I thought about what I'd been carrying around, the lie about my mother, and it felt heavier than the bag did. So, there it is. I reached across the table and put my hand over hers briefly and took it away. She nodded once and got up and went to her cot and lay down facing the wall. Mira in those 2 days was the only one who got better. She slept, she ate. She drew small, careful animals in the margins of the orange paperback, horses mostly, and a few birds. She did not ask about Ellis. She did not put her ear to the floor. She did not flinch when the air handler clicked on. She seemed in some way I couldn't name to have grown a year older in the 2 days since we'd come back, the way children sometimes do after a fever. On the second evening, she came to me where I was sitting against the wall, and she climbed into my lap and put her head against my shoulder. And she said, "Daddy." "Yeah, baby. I want to tell you something, but I don't want you to be sad." "Okay." "I knew he wasn't Grandpa." I went very still. "I knew the whole time," she said. "He didn't say the right things. Grandpa used to say Mira bug. He never said Mira like that. I just liked talking to him because nobody else was talking to me about it." "Oh, sweetheart. I'm sorry I told him our names." "Mira, I'm sorry." "Mira, listen to me. Listen, you are 6 years old. You did not do anything wrong. Do you understand me? Nothing that happened was your fault. We are all adults and we should have talked to you more and we didn't, and that is on us, not on you. Do you hear me?" She nodded against my chest. "I love you," she said. "I love you, baby." We sat there for a long time. Across the bunker, Iris was watching us with an expression I would carry for the rest of my life. The expression of a woman watching her family from a great distance, even though she was 12 feet away. That night, for the first time in 11 days, the bunker was completely silent. No knocking, no breathing, no mimicked voices from the floor. I lay awake listening to the silence, and I understood, slowly, that the silence was its own kind of message. and that I did not yet know what it meant. On the morning of the fourth day after the pumping station, the radio came back on. We hadn't been listening to it much. There hadn't been anything to listen to. The emergency broadcast had gone to a recorded loop on the second day of the outbreak, and then to static on the fifth, and had stayed there. Halden left it on at a low volume out of habit, the way some people leave a porch light on for a person who isn't coming home. That morning, the static cut. A voice came through. "This is Convoy 7, broadcasting on the emergency band. Do you copy? Over." We all stopped moving. The voice was a woman's, calm, professional, with the small rasp of someone who had been talking too much and sleeping too little. It came again. "This is Convoy 7, U.S. Army Reserve, 28th out of Pittsburgh, broadcasting on the emergency band. We are moving west on State Route 11 toward the Allegheny Crossing. Any survivors in range, please respond. We have medical, we have transport, we have a secure site at the crossing. Over." Brenna sat up. Cal turned toward his father. Halden's face did not change. The voice came a third time, the same words. Then it cut to a long beep, and then it began a cycle. A loop. Not live. "It's a loop," Halden said. "Recorded. They're broadcasting it from a relay somewhere." "That doesn't mean they're not real," Iris said. "No, it doesn't. How far is State Route 11? 40 miles, north. 40 miles. By road. Less as the crow flies, but we are not crows." The loop played again. Convoy 7, medical, transport, secure site, 40 miles north. The voice did not change. The static did not change. The bunker did not change. And yet the air in the room had completely changed, and I could feel it in my chest, the way air changes when a door opens somewhere out of sight. "We have the truck," Cal said. "We have a truck with a quarter tank of gas behind a building that may not be standing." "Dad? I am not saying no, Cal. I am saying let's not pretend it's easy." Brenna spoke. "I have 3 weeks of insulin. Maybe 4. That site, if it's real, has more. If it isn't real, I'm dead in a month down here anyway. I want to go." Iris said, "Mira." That was the whole sentence. Mira. We all looked at her. "Mira can't stay down here forever," Iris said. "I have 9 pills of my own medication left. We have 31 cans of food, less now. We have a fixed supply and an open clock. Even if nothing else happens, even if the hatch stays sealed and the radio stays clear, and we eat like mice, we are out of food in 5 weeks and out of water in 3. Then what?" "Then we leave," Halden said. "Then we leave hungry and weak. Now we have a destination. Now we have a reason. Now we have a window. Or now we have a trap." "Halden." "It's the right thing to ask, Iris. It is exactly the kind of broadcast you put on a loop if you want to draw survivors to one place. I am not saying it is a trap. I am saying the question has to be asked." Brenna said, "It also might just be a convoy." "Yes, it also might just be a convoy." We sat with that for a while. In the end, it was Cal who said the thing none of us wanted to say. "We have to go," he said. "Dad, we have to. I know what's outside. I went outside. I know what we'd be walking into. And I'm telling you, we have to go. Because what we left outside is bad. But what's down here is worse. Down here we just sit and wait for the food to run out, and the pills to run out, and the insulin to run out. And we watch each other thin out, and we do not get to be people anymore by the end of it. Up there we get a chance. A small one, but a real one. And we are still people on the road. Even if we don't make it, we are still people on the road." Halden looked at his son for a long, long time. Then he said, "Okay." He said it quietly. He said it the way a man says it when he has just agreed to a thing he has been arguing against in his own head for longer than the conversation has been happening. "Okay," he said again. "We go. We pack tonight. We move at first light. We take the rifle, the shotgun, the handgun, all the ammunition, all the water we can carry, the insulin, the pills, 3 days of food. Anything else we leave, we move fast. We do not stop for anyone we do not know. We do not stop for any sound. We do not stop for any voice. Do you understand me? We do not stop for any voice." He was looking at Mira when he said the last part. She looked back at him very steadily and she said, "I understand, Mr. Halden." We packed in near silence. It is a strange thing to pack a life into a single bag when the life is already so small. Iris and I had come into the bunker with one duffel between us, and most of what we had brought was Mira's. A change of clothes, her stuffed rabbit, which she had not held in 3 days and now held again. The orange paperback, a small Ziploc of crayons, a photograph from her 5th birthday party where she was blowing out candles and Iris was laughing, and I was looking at Iris, not the camera. I put the photograph in the inside pocket of my jacket, against my chest, where it would be the last thing on me. Halden moved through the bunker with a methodical grief. He took his late wife's wedding ring out of a small wooden box on the shelf above the radio and put it in his pocket. He took a single book down from the small library at the back of the chamber, a battered copy of a poetry collection, and slid it into his pack. He left everything else. He looked at the place the way a man looks at a house he is selling, with the practical eye that is also a way of not looking. Cal packed quickly and lightly. He had been ready to leave since the moment he came back up the ladder. Brenna packed her insulin in 3 different bags, distributed across her body, the way people who have lived with a chronic condition learn to distribute the thing that keeps them alive. She also packed, I noticed, the dead transmitter board that Halden had pulled from the radio. I didn't ask why. I thought I understood. Iris sat on the cot with Mira and braided her hair, slowly 3 small braids down the back, the way she used to braid it before school. Mira sat very still and let her. They didn't talk. The braiding was the talking. At some point in the evening, Halden came over to where I was checking the straps on my pack. "Adam." "Yeah." "You should know." "Yeah." "The tunnel collapse. The blast. I built this place over a solid rock on the south and east sides. But the north side where the tunnel was, the north side is just packed earth. The blast might have done more than collapse the tunnel." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the bunker may not be as stable as it was 4 days ago. I'm saying I don't know what the next hard rain does to a structure with a compromised north wall. I'm saying we are leaving tomorrow either way, but I want you to know that we are also leaving because we have to, not just because we want to." I looked at him. "How long have you known?" "Since the day after." "You didn't say. You didn't need another reason to be afraid. None of you did. I wanted the decision to be made for the right reasons, not the desperate ones." "Halden." "I know. I should have told you. I'm telling you now." I nodded. There was nothing else to say. That night we slept in our clothes. We slept with our packs at the foot of the cots and our boots beside the packs. Iris held Mira against her chest, and I lay with my arm across both of them, and for a long time none of us spoke. Mira said, in the smallest voice, "Daddy." "Yeah, baby." What if Convoy 7 isn't real? I had been waiting for this question. I had been rehearsing the answer for hours, and now when she asked it, I found that none of my rehearsed answers were good enough. "Then we'll figure out the next thing," I said. "What's the next thing?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart. I won't know until we get there. But I want you to listen to me. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever you see, whatever you hear, you stay with me or with Mommy. You do not let go of our hands. You do not run. You do not talk to anyone we don't know. If we say get down, you get down. If we say run, you run, but you run with us. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Mira." "Yes, Daddy. I understand." "I love you so much." "I love you too." I lay there listening to her breathing, slow and even, and to my wife's breathing, finally, slow and even too. And I thought about the man under the floor who was no longer under the floor, and about the convoy on the loop, and about the 40 miles of road between us and a place we had no way to know existed. I thought about Cal, 19 years old, who had stood beside me in the pumping station and not let me put my hand down into that hatch. I thought about Halden, who had built a place to keep something out and had ended up keeping us in long enough to save us. I thought about Brenna, who had carried a lie about her dead mother for 9 months and laid it down on a table in front of strangers. I thought about Iris, who had married a chemistry teacher and ended up underground with him, and who had not once, in 11 days, looked at me as if she regretted any of it. At some point, I fell asleep. When I woke up, the lantern was just beginning to brighten with the morning timer, and somewhere above us, very faintly, I could hear the sound of an engine. We went up. Halden went first, then Cal, then Brenna, then Iris with Mira on her hip and one hand free for the rungs, then me. I came up last because someone had to close the hatch, and because if anything came out behind us, I wanted my body between it and them. The shed was as we had left it. The yard was not. There were more of them. 3 in the neighbor's driveway, 2 in the street beyond the fence line. 1 on the roof of Halden's burned house, perfectly still, perched on what used to be the chimney, watching the eastern sky. The body of the one Cal had shot 4 days ago was still in the yard, but something had been at it, and what was left of it was small. The engine sound was coming from the north. It was steady. It was moving away. "That's not the convoy," Halden said. "Convoy's on Route 11. Wrong direction." "Then who is it?" "Doesn't matter. It's drawing them. Look." He was right. The 2 in the street had begun to drift north, slowly with the loose, unhurried gait of things that had heard something interesting and were not in any particular rush about it. One of the ones in the driveway had turned the same way. "Now," Halden whispered, "while they're looking the other direction. Single file. Stay low. The truck is in the alley behind the hardware store, 6 blocks south. We move on the back of the lots. We do not cross the open street unless I say." We moved. I will not pretend I remember the next 20 minutes clearly. I remember it the way you remember a fever. Pieces. Iris's hand around Mira's wrist, white-knuckled. Cal's back ahead of me, the shotgun held diagonally across his chest. Brenna stumbling once on a root, and Halden catching her without a word. The smell of the burned house giving way to the smell of the next yard, which was something worse. A cat, a real cat, alive somehow, watching us from the top of a fence with its tail straight up. A child's bicycle on its side in a driveway, the streamers still bright. We made it 3 blocks before one of them saw us. It came around the corner of a garage and it stopped, and it tilted its head, and Halden raised his hand to halt us. And we all went still, and the thing stood there for a count of maybe 10, deciding. Then it opened its mouth. It made a sound exactly like a baby crying. Iris's hand on Mira's wrist tightened. Mira didn't move. Mira did not even look at the thing. She kept her eyes on the back of Cal's jacket, where I had told her to keep them. And she breathed through her mouth slowly, the way I had shown her. And she did not make a sound. The thing took a step toward us. Halden raised the shotgun. "No," I whispered. "The noise." He held. The thing took another step, then another. It was 20 feet away. 15. Cal moved. He moved without warning in one long fluid motion, and he had a knife in his hand I hadn't known he was carrying. And he covered the distance between himself and the thing in 3 strides, and he put the knife through the underside of its jaw and up. The thing went down without a sound. Cal went down on top of it, his weight pinning it, his free hand clamped over its mouth, and he stayed there for what felt like a very long time, until whatever was in it stopped moving. Then he stood up. He didn't look at any of us. He just wiped the knife on his jeans and turned and kept walking. Halden behind me made a small sound. Not words, just a sound. The sound a father makes when he sees his son do a thing the son will not come back from being the kind of person who can do. We made it to the alley. The truck was there. The truck was, miraculously, intact. Halden had parked it nose out and covered it with a tarp and stacked old pallets in front of it to make it look like a junk pile, and the disguise had held. He pulled the tarp off in one practice motion and we climbed in, Cal in the driver's seat because his hands were the steadiest of any of ours. Halden in the passenger's seat with the rifle across his lap, Brenna and Iris and Mira and me in the back. The engine caught on the first turn of the key. Cal looked at his father. "North," Halden said. "Don't stop." We went north. We were 11 miles up Route 11 when we found the convoy. We found it the way you find a thing that has stopped being a thing, spread out across 2 lanes of highway. 3 trucks, one of them on its side. A Humvee with both doors open. Bodies. Some of them in uniform, some of them not. A small fire still burning in the cab of one of the trucks, sending up a column of black smoke that we had been watching for 10 miles without knowing what it was. Cal slowed the truck a quarter-mile out. We sat at the edge of the road, the engine idling, and we looked. "Move," Halden said. "Slow. Around them." "Dad." "Slow, Cal. Around them. Do not stop." Cal drove. We threaded between the wrecks at 15 miles an hour. None of us spoke. Mira had her face buried in Iris's shoulder. Iris had her face turned toward the window, but her eyes closed. Brenna was looking, and her face was the face of a woman who had finally seen the size of the thing she had been hoping against. At the far end of the wreckage, propped against the side of the overturned truck, was a woman in uniform. She was alive. She had a radio handset in her lap, and she was looking at us, and when we drew level with her, she lifted one hand, palm up, in a gesture that was not quite a wave and not quite a surrender. Cal stopped the truck without being told. Halden didn't argue. I got out. So did Iris. We approached the woman slowly, hands visible. She watched us come. She was maybe 40, dark hair, a tag over her left breast pocket that read, Caspian. "You're the Loop," Iris said. The woman almost smiled. "I'm the Loop." What happened? What always happens? We got loud. They came. Are there others? Other survivors? At the crossing? She closed her eyes. "There was a crossing," she said. "Yesterday. There were 200 of us. By this morning, there were 40. By an hour ago, I do not know how many there are. The relay's still running on a battery north of here. It'll run another day. Then it stops." Iris knelt beside her. She was already in doctor mode. Her hands were on the woman's neck, then her ribs, then her abdomen, and her face was telling me, without looking at me, that the woman was not going to survive the next hour. "Caspian." "Yeah. Is there anything north of here? Anything at all? A safe direction? A place you would send your own family?" The woman looked at her for a long time. "North of the crossing, there's a ranger station," she said, "on the ridge above the river. It's stone. It's small. 3 of my people were going to fall back there if the crossing went bad. I don't know if they made it. I don't know if it's defensible. But it is stone and it is high, and the road up to it switchbacks 4 times, which means anything coming after you has to come slow. That is what I would tell my family, if I had family to tell." "Thank you. There's a map in the Humvee, center console. Take it." "Thank you, Caspian." "Take the handset too. The frequency's set. If you find anyone at all, you can reach me on it as long as I'm breathing, which won't be long." Iris looked at her. "I can stay," she said. "No, you can't. You have a kid in that truck. I saw her. Go." Iris stayed kneeling beside her another moment. She put one hand on the woman's hand. The woman closed her fingers around hers, briefly, and let go. I got the map. I got the handset. We got back in the truck. Cal drove. We drove for another hour, threading north and east through back roads, Halden marked with a pencil on Caspian's map, the engine humming, the gas needle dropping, the sky beginning to do the thing November skies do in the late afternoon, going pale and then gold, and then a thin, cold blue. Somewhere in that hour, Mira fell asleep against Iris's shoulder. Somewhere in that hour, Brenna reached across the bench seat and took my hand briefly and let go, and I understood that she was thanking me for something I hadn't done on purpose, which was, I think, treating her like a person at the table the day she put her lie down. Somewhere in that hour, Halden began to hum, very softly under his breath, a song I didn't know, something old, something his wife had probably sung to Cal when Cal was small. Cal, driving, hummed along. We came around a switchback at the top of the ridge as the sun was setting, and the ranger station came into view above us, small and gray and square against the sky, and there was smoke coming from its chimney, the thin, honest smoke of a fire someone had built on purpose. And there were 3 figures on the roof, and one of them stood up when they saw the truck and lifted a hand and waved. Cal stopped the truck at the bottom of the last rise. He turned in his seat and looked at all of us. "We don't know who they are," he said. "No," Halden said. "They might not let us in." "No." "They might." "Yes." Cal looked at me. He looked at Iris. He looked at Mira, sleeping. He looked at his father. "Let's go find out," he said. He put the truck in gear, and we drove up the last rise toward the small gray building on the ridge. And behind us, far down the valley, the sun went down on a road we would not have to drive again. It has been 4 months. The ranger station held. There were 11 of us by the end of that first week, and there are 19 of us now, and the stone walls are still stone, and the switchbacks are still slow, and the woman who waved from the roof that first evening turned out to be one of Caspian's people. And she remembered Caspian's name when I said it, and she cried for half an hour with her face against the wall. And then she wiped her face and went back to organizing the watch rotation. Halden is teaching the children to read maps. There are 4 children now. Mira is the oldest. She is patient with the younger ones the way her mother was patient with her. Cal does not talk about the pumping station. He does not talk about the thing in the green jacket, or the thing with the baby's cry. He talks sometimes about his mother, who died when he was 12. I think that is the same conversation in his head. I think for the rest of his life, it will be the same conversation. Brenna has insulin for another 8 months. We are looking. Iris sleeps now. Not every night, but most nights. I lie beside her, and I listen to her breathe. And I think about the woman who held my wrist under a blanket 11 days into the world ending. And I am grateful every single time that the woman is still here. Mira no longer asks about Ellis. She asked once, 2 months in, what happened to the knocking man. I told her the truth. I told her there were things in the world that learned how to sound like people, and that they were very good at it, and that they had almost fooled me, and that the only reason they hadn't was that she had told me, calmly, on the 4th day, that she had known the whole time. She thought about it for a while, then she said, "Daddy, I think you would have known too. Eventually." I don't know if that's true, but I love her for saying it. And every night, before she goes to sleep, she puts her ear against the stone wall of the ranger station, very briefly, and she listens. Nothing knocks back. That is the closest thing to peace I have known in a year, and I will take it, and I will hold it, and I will not ask it to be anything more than what it is.